Record levels of migration are straining an immigration system left nearly broken by decades of congressional inaction. Republicans have spent years amplifying scenes of turmoil and tragedy at the southern border, but Democratic leaders are also worried now, particularly big city mayors and blue state governors, who are demanding more federal resources to shelter and feed an influx of migrants. With many voters now saying immigration is a top priority, what exactly is happening at the U.S. border to make so many people concerned? The collapse of Venezuela, political instability in Haiti, violence in Ecuador, a crackdown in Nicaragua, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, repression in China, and other conflicts have fueled a historic shift in migration patterns. Mexico was the single most common origin country for US border encounters in 2023, but Mexican nationals made up less than 30% of the total share, compared with more than 60% a decade ago. Nearly 9,000 people attempting to reach the U.S. from the south have been recorded missing or dead in the Americas in the past 10 years, according to the Missing Migrants Project. Some never make it through the notorious Darien Gap at the southern end of Central America, where a U.S. deal with Panama and Colombia to stop migrants in their tracks has caused an outcry. Looking at the locations of all migrant deaths from 2014 through early 2024 show patterns of grave danger. Drownings are clustered along the Rio Grande River. Heat and exposure to the elements have caused deaths mostly on the U.S. side of the border. Transportation accidents and violence have caused deaths along the path through Mexico to the U.S. The vast majority of recorded fatalities, however, occur at the U.S.-Mexico border crossing, according to the project's data. Many of the deaths occurred in southern Arizona when people attempted to cross open desert, miles from any roads. Fatalities are also concentrated along the treacherous stretch of southwestern Texas, where the Rio Grande River becomes the borderline. Further inland, hundreds of deaths have been recorded in the sparse, humid scrubland around Falfurrias. Their cases languish in courts. The border rules are complicated. Some people apprehended at the border will face expedited deportation, but others will enter formal deportation proceedings and qualify for temporary release into the U.S. with a date to appear before a judge. Resolving those immigration cases and asylum claims can take years. The backlog of immigration cases has grown steadily. There were an astounding 3.3 cases pending as of December 2023, but just 682 immigration judges. That means the average caseload is more than 4,500 per judge. In the meantime, people arriving often find themselves in unofficial camps all along the U.S. border. Some are waiting to cross, others have been met by U.S. Border Patrol, yet others have been turned away. Some border states, such as Texas, have put tens of thousands of people awaiting their asylum claims on buses and sent them to other states, including California and New York, without their knowledge or permission. As for Congress, it continues to argue over clamping down on unlawful border crossings and alleviating the deepening humanitarian crisis, an increasingly irreconcilable divide between those who want to expand the immigration system and those who want to restrict it. The record level of migrants arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border loomed over a gathering of governors at the White House this weekend, revealing how the issue has become prominent in states nationwide and across the political spectrum. The National Governors Association holds a gathering of governors at the White House annually to discuss matters affecting their states and other kitchen table issues. For years, immigration has been on the back burner. But that was not the case this year. Several governors CNN spoke with over the weekend said immigration was the primary focus of their discussions. This is the no. One issue on Americans' minds right now. Montana Republican Gov. Greg Gianforte said, "Everybody realizes that this is a significant problem right now and it challenged North Carolina Democratic Gov." Roy Cooper told CNN, "Governors nationwide, regardless of their proximity to the U.S. southern border, have been grappling with migrant arrivals, in part as a result of Republican Texas Gov. Greg Abbott busing migrants to Democratic-led cities unannounced." President Joe Biden acknowledged their challenges in his remarks before governors Friday. "You deal with this every day. Some of you deal with it every single day. You have real skin in the game," Biden said, urging governors to ramp up the pressure on lawmakers to pass what he described as the strongest border deal the country has ever seen. Several governors told CNN that they spoke with the president about potential solutions to addressing the challenges related to border security. "I think what you saw in that room at the White House was both Democrats and Republicans that want a solution, and that don't think that Congress can simply sit on the sidelines," said Democratic Kentucky Gov. Andy Beshear, describing the discussions as civil, As the White House navigates Republican criticism and Democratic outcry, some who want to see stricter measures and others wary of that approach, Biden has sought to embrace stricter border security measures. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The president is considering sweeping executive action that would restrict migrants' ability to seek asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border if they crossed illegally, a maneuver reminiscent of controversial action from the Trump era. White House officials maintain no final decision has been made. Republican Utah Gov. Spencer Cox said Friday that Biden told governors that he is working with lawyers to understand what executive action he could take on immigration, but that the president appeared frustrated, that he was not getting answers from attorneys that felt he could take the kind of actions that he wanted to. Republican Gov. Doug Burgum of North Dakota underscored the need for additional resources along the U.S. southern border, arguing, "I think there's a ton of things that can be done right now without legislation." The president's mulling over taking executive action comes after Senate Republicans blocked a bipartisan border deal earlier this month that included sweeping measures, including an authority to shut down the U.S.-Mexico border. Think that, at least for now, this legislation is on life support. "I think that the president is going to look at what we can do," Cooper said, referring to the Senate border bill. Some actions that potentially he might take, obviously they would be litigated as to whether they would be able to work or not. The White House has slammed Republicans for not taking up the measure tied to a foreign aid package. And on Friday, each of the tables where governors were seated had a fact sheet with details of the border deal. The handling of the U.S.-Mexico border has been a political liability for Biden, whose team has grappled with rising migration across the Western Hemisphere, made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. The failed border bill, though, handed the president a political opportunity, said New Jersey Democratic Gov. Phil Murphy. "It's quite clear, no matter what you think about the immigration policy, we know now who to blame for the lack of action, which is awful for America. But it's frankly a gift for the president," he said. Abbott's escalating border tactics have brought the migrant crisis to the doorsteps of Democratic-led cities and states, placing the issue at the forefront of a heated election cycle and forcing Democrats to respond to it. All this bickering between both parties needs to stop. I ask our leaders to stop politicizing this immigration issue and come to the table to find solutions to address this immigration issue. Mayor Ramiro Garza of the border city of Edinburgh, Texas, said in a statement. Garza and other mayors from across the country met with Biden last month at the White House to discuss the influx of migrants arriving in their cities. For months, Democratic and Republican lawmakers have called on Biden to provide more resources to help them address these challenges. Migrants often move to cities within the United States if they're eligible to be released from government custody and as they go through their immigration proceedings. But Abbott sent thousands of migrants to select cities without a heads up, leaving officials scrambling to respond. Democratic strategists have acknowledged the political effect of Abbott's moves. The fear of Abbott's stunts working to scare people was there from the beginning, and there's a lot of people running around right now scared that it's working, one Democratic strategist told CNN. He played into the idea of pitting immigrants against the American people in general and against immigrants who have been here for years, the strategist added. The legal system is deeply broken. Migrants have a legal right enshrined in us and international law to seek asylum and are entitled to a fair hearing, the same as any other citizen. But the legal system for evaluating whether migrants arriving at the border qualify for asylum or other humanitarian protections is deeply broken. The immigration courts, which evaluate asylum and humanitarian claims, are chronically underfunded and have a backlog of more than 2 million cases. In 2023, resolving those cases took more than 2 years on average, during which time migrants may be detained or released into the U.S. This reality doesn't just arguably incentivize more migrants to seek to cross the border. It also shirks the U.S.'s legal and moral obligations to asylum seekers. Many migrants are forced to navigate the process themselves. Unlike in the criminal court system, there is no guarantee of legal representation, even though immigration law is notorious for being second in complexity only to the U.S. tax code, and some migrants may not even speak English. This is untenable. But as I recently argued, the bill under consideration in the Senate doesn't meaningfully address those problems, instead relying on a broad authority to turn away migrants at times of high demand. Any reforms would have to balance the U.S.'s commitment to ensuring that migrants are not sent away to danger, as is required by law, with streamlining the process. To start, the government could allocate resources to the various steps of this process in the interest of speeding it up. That could include hiring and sending to the border more non-law enforcement personnel who are trained to evaluate asylum claims, as well as more immigration judges and court staff, and offering legal representation to migrants can make the proceedings smoother for all involved.
We have reached the end of the video. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that everything new reaches you.